it's May. And I have read, how many books did I read for April? 11. I had to remember for a second. My brain doesn't always compute the way that I want it to. Does anybody else feel like that? Anyway, so I read 11 books. Some were doozies and some were amazing. I definitely have sat back and thought about my favorite and which one is my favorite, and we'll get to that. But I read mostly mystery, thrillers, and horrors this month. I don't think I read any romance. I haven't been really finding romance that fits me, and it's weird because I want to, and yeah, but I don't know. I used to be such a romance person when I was growing up that it feels weird that I don't really like romance anymore. So I don't know if that's somebody else feels that way. I don't know, but anywho, it is May, which means in the art world, I want to share quick. It means it's mermaid. So I have been drawing mermaids, and I will do a vlog on that. I'm going to do, at the end of the month, I'm going to do a mermaid check-in and kind of go through what I did for mermaid. But these were my original, this is my first day of sketches since it's May 2nd today. And I am pretty proud of this one. I love this one and this one. Okay, so I love them all. This one's she's kind of wonky down there. But I also did a painting. So I'm gonna take all my sketches and pick a pose that I like, and then do a painting of it every year. These are my swatches, or every day. So this one was like lilacs, and then I've asked a bunch of my friends for flowers. And so if you have flowers, let me know, because I don't know, I'm not a big flower person. I don't know much about flowers. I have come to love them. Like, art has really gotten me into nature, but I was never a nature person. I always was, even now, I choose to be inside rather than outside, because outside, I feel like I'm allergic to the outside. And I have two sons who want to be outside all the time. So I'm getting used to it. And gardening and stuff. So that's what May is looking like for me. So I'm kind of excited about May. And so therefore, I'm excited to wrap up April. And so the first book that I read, and I've talked about it a couple times in a couple of my videos for April, so I'm not going to go too close into it, is The Project by Courtney Summers. It was fantastic. I recommend it for people who like mystery thrillers. It's rated YA, but sometimes I think Courtney Summers is really dark. She's definitely an autobiographical author for me at this point. I have read 3 or 4 of her books now, and I've enjoyed every single one. So yeah, I don't know. It's a cult book, and so it's hard for me to recommend it because not everybody's into cult stuff. But I think with my background being in a cult, I always want to see how they portray it. And a lot of times they get it right. Courtney Summers is probably the most accurate I've ever seen. So that's why I really like that book. The next one I read was, I just rolled my eyes because I don't remember anything about this. This one was recommended from the Facebook group Books of Horror. And it was actually a woman who I discovered was local to me. And I thought that was so awesome. And she was like, this book is so scary and so good. The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. I can tell you that there is a vicar in it. There is a weird little church and a weird little town, and there's a serial killer. And there's a big twist, and I could not tell you the rest of the details. I mean, I know the details, but the rest of it was so boring. I don't know why I finished it. I gave it 2 stars. The average rating for it, which is really surprising, is 4.03, so maybe it's just me, and I just didn't enjoy it. But it's really, looking at my list of books, it's one of the higher rated for the month. So I probably am the anomaly in that one, and I just didn't enjoy The Burning Girls. So that's okay. The next one is The House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. And this one was 3 sisters. One of them, they get abducted when they were young, and they disappeared for a month and came back and couldn't remember where they had been the entire month they were abducted. And so then you're piecing together what happened then, and then what's going on now is their oldest sister disappeared again, and they're trying to find her. And it is dark, it is gritty, it is fantasy, it's got lore of like fairies. It is so good. I can't describe it. It is haunting. It is like, I think it's YA horror fantasy, but it was one that actually scared me. I actually woke up from a nightmare from it. So it was so successful for me. I loved the characters. I loved the relationship between the three sisters. Everything about the book. I just loved it. It was a great book. It was a pick for Meg with Books book club, and I my book club picks this month, my book club, they were on par. So I read that one. Highly recommend if you like gothic horror, dark, gritty, weird things happening. It's not one that I think I'd recommend to every person, because it is definitely, it's definitely not like normal, if that makes sense, but I enjoyed it. Another one that I read, the next one, was Lone Women by Victor Laval. I had been reading that since March, and I finally finished it in April. It was one that I was so excited about, and it did not disappoint. I gave it 4 stars because there were, for me, I think what I struggled with is that the pacing was a little off for me in the middle, and I put it down for like 2 weeks, and then I picked it back up because I wanted to finish it, and I'm glad I finished it, but I think not reading it for 2 weeks was not the right choice. So I would recommend, if you're going to read this one, to like read it, like sit down with it for a few days. The chapters are really short, so it gives this sense of like foreboding. It is about a Black woman who moves to Montana in the early 1900s to homestead. So, I mean, the author did his research. He added dark horror fantasy elements to a real life struggle of like lone women on the prairie. And Montana is a beautiful place, but anybody who lives here in the Midwest, like this area, because Montana, I'm in South Dakota, so Montana is like, I have family in Montana and things. So this area, like, we are bred tough. Like we have tough winters. We have tough, it's not easy. Like unlike the farming communities in this area, like they work together hard. So it's just, he did such a good job. And I really, really appreciate the book, especially like the historical parts of it, that he took the historical parts, and I thought he definitely did those well, like the Western feel, but he added such cool twists, and it was good. It was great. I gave it 4 because of the pacing issues, but I think like looking back on it, if I would have read it all together, it would probably be a 5. So it's so hard because it's subjective, like obviously ratings are all subjective and it's all opinion, but that one I feel like I need to pick up again and like read it from cover to cover without breaks, if that makes sense. Okay. Next one is Devil House by John Darnielle. Give it 1 star. This one I should have DNF'd. I was really enjoying it for like the first 30%, and then I got really confused, and there were pieces that were trying to be put together, and then at 60% it went off the rails even more than it was going off the rails, and then 80% I understood at 80% I understood what he was trying to do, but I don't think he executed it well. He was trying to make a commentary on how true crime sells, and like the stories, if they're actually really interesting, or like do people glamorize true crime, and he just did not do it well. The story wasn't written well. Like, he had a lot of like commentary bombs in the first part, so I was like, yes, and then it was just like there was no, like, the plot just didn't work. So 1 star, do not recommend. Maybe other people want to check it out and might find something, but it is pretty lowly rated on Goodreads too. So I'm not the only one who feels this way, but it came to say something, and it did not say it in a good way, in my opinion. The next one I read was The London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. And this one I gave 3 stars to. 3.5 stars. It was a very entertaining novel. Nothing wrong with it. I just, I don't think in 6 months I'm going to remember much of it, but it was about a girl, Lena, whose sister dies, and so she goes on to get mentored by her sister's seance mentor, and so and they're trying to solve her sister's murder, and they're trying to solve another murder, which I enjoyed. The atmosphere was great, the history was great, the writing was good. Like, there was nothing wrong with the book. It just wasn't what, I don't know, it just didn't have that like pizzazz. I'd read from Sarah Penner again. It was a good book. It was a good book. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. It's just not going to be like an all-time favorite, if that makes sense. Like that, it was, and I think the cover is beautiful, and I picked it up because of the cover, and I'm not sad that I read it. So there's that. And like, I think it's it's a great book for what it was. It was just kind of, I had a few like filler books, and I was really struggling after Devil House, and so I'm glad I picked it up. Excuse me, my nose itches. Sorry, allergies. We've got like everything coming out. This is my back window, and there's just like, we live behind a cornfield, and allergies. So I hope that other people are feeling this right now, because allergies are awful. No, I don't. I hope other people aren't feeling this. Sorry. Excuse me. The next one I read was The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett. And that one was a mixed media voice recordings of a guy trying to find what happened to his teacher. Like years ago, his teacher just all of a sudden went missing, and he's like, I don't remember what happened. And so he's trying to discover what happened to her. And there's just so many things. There's like a code, and there's a book. There's like a code in a book, and they go on an adventure, and it was kind of weird. And I loved it. I loved the commentary that this had on low income people, lower educated, and just, it was a great book. So Twyford Code, it was so unique too. So I highly recommend it. 5 stars. One of my favorites of the year so far. I don't know if it would be like top, but it's like middle favorites, if that makes sense. Yeah. All right. The next one I read, and this one I did not give a rating to due to the nature of it, and I'm just really trying to like think about how I approach true crime. So this was a true crime book. It's called The Yoga Store Murder, The Shocking True Account of the Lululemon Athletica Killing by Dan Morse. And it was a hard case, and a woman gets murdered. A woman was murdered in 2011 in the Lululemon store in Bethesda. Is it Maryland? Bethesda, Maryland. Yes. And another one of her co-workers is also left, but she's alive, but she'd been attacked. And this goes through the whole thing. It starts from the murder, and sometimes I understand the impact of showing like how much a person was murdered. This murder was brutal, and it goes in through the detectives and how, like, I thought Dan Morse did such a good job going from the crime to how the detectives took over to what they did, and how they got to their conclusions, and it was very procedural, and went up to the trial. And so they did have a perpetrator, and it was so heavy. It was so heavy. It's one of those that, I used to consume so much more true crime, and I'm really trying to it was, I don't know why. I mean, it's an interesting conversation of why we consume true crime when these are the things that literally happen to people. Like, this is their life, and it's so hard. But like, I think there's something to be said about understanding the process, because there are a lot of people who are insensitive. Well, why didn't the police do this? And why didn't police do that? And I think if we understand what goes into one case, just one, like, it will help us. And I really appreciated how much this author went into explaining like the details of how, like, there's laws and there's things that you can't just be like, oh, I know you murdered this person, so like, there's due process and steps, and we have to follow those. And so I really appreciated that of this book. And this book was one that I'm not gonna soon forget. And it was heavy and it was hard, but I think there's an importance to ones that are written well, and this one was definitely written well. The next book, however, I read was completely off the walls bonkers. 5 stars, The Writing Retreat. I have waffled back and forth on whether I'm going to give this 5 stars, because I'm comparing it to other books of the month, like, that I gave 5 stars for the month. But this one was wackadoo in all the right ways for me. It's not going to be for everyone. These writers get invited to a mansion of their favorite author to write a book in a month, like NaNoWriMo style, and things just go crazy from there. And it is borderline, it is definitely thriller, but borderline horror and all sorts of fun. And I loved all the different things. Like, this book, you will not see everything coming, because there's no way. Like, this author wrote a good story. The characters were ones that were written well to dislike. Like, I didn't like a single character. I did not like them, but they were written well, and they were so so when I was looking at my rating scale, like, one of them is like, I would die for these characters. I wouldn't die for any of these characters, not a single one, but they were so memorable that, like, they're just their idiosyncrasies, they're like the things that they did. So it's one of those, like, don't go in expecting like an Agatha Christie one by one, because you're not going to get that here. You're going to get The Writing Retreat, which is wacko. And I definitely recommend it for people who like wacko. I thought of, like, it had House of Hunger vibes by Alexis Henderson. It had, it did give me some Bunny vibes with how crazy it was. It was very erotic. So if you're going into it, expect eroticism, because it's a little weird. But that's The Writing Retreat. I enjoyed it. The next one I read was kind of a little happy. Well, it wasn't happy, but graphic, not gothic. I love gothic novels, so of course I would say that. Next one's graphic novel, Pilu of the Woods by Mai Nguyen. And it was just a little story. It was an afternoon read. It was it's middle grade, and it's a story about a girl who runs away from her house because she gets into a fight, and she meets a little forest sprite who has also run away, and they are talking about their shared experiences of running away. And it's just sweet, and it deals with grief and loss and things in such a beautiful way. And the art was just, oh, chef's kiss. Loved the art. And so that one was definitely a 5-star read for me. It's one I'm like, oh, go out and read it. But I really loved it. I picked it up from the library and enjoyed that one. And then my final book that I read this month was No Exit by Taylor Adams, which was another locked room. I'm really getting into the locked room mysteries, writing retreat. Was there any other locked rooms that I read this month? I don't think so, but No Exit was people stranded in a snowstorm at a rest area. Things happen. And I gave it a 3. It wasn't as successful, and I'd heard so much hype about it, and it just didn't live up to the hype for me. And maybe had I read it when it first came out and it was my first thriller, my first thing, something, I probably would have loved it, but it just, I don't know. I just didn't. I even like struggle with the 3 stars because there's nothing wrong with it. It's written well. I just didn't enjoy it. I already am like, ugh, okay, well, I'm glad I read it so I know what the hype is, but yeah, I didn't enjoy it. But that was my month in a nutshell. Like, thinking about all the like books that I've read of the month, and I've been thinking about this for the last few days. House of Hollow is definitely my favorite for the month, and it had some contenders. It had The Project, it had The Twyford Code, it had The Writing Retreat. Even Lone Women I gave 4, but like it's still, I read it at the beginning of the month and in March, so it still like impacts me in a way that I think I could bump it up to 5 stars and be okay with that. So like looking at those, I still though, I can see scenes that like the writing Crystal Sutherland has is so beautiful. I went back and I picked up a couple of her backlists that I'm going to rereading. So I definitely think that House of Hollow is my favorite for the month. It has stuck with me from the beginning of the month because I finished the 4th of April. It's stuck with me. There's scenes, there's feelings, there's just so many different things about this book. Like I'm sitting here and I'm just having scenes pop into my head. And that I think is the most the most successful of the books that I read for that. So yeah, that is my month in a wrap. This month of May, I plan with my mermaid art. I plan to read a couple mermaid books. I have a couple already. I think if you can see it. No, you can't, but it's back there. The Hidden is supposed to be mermaids. The Hidden by Melanie Golding. It is mermaids. Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant is something that I'm hoping to get to. We'll see. I am trying to embrace the mood reading for the month and see. I have a little TBR. I made it smaller for the month and I put like, oh, here's a couple options in case none of these feel good. So I'm trying to like feel out myself and understand myself even more. But as we get into the summer, we'll see what I'm in the mood for. Maybe I'm finally in the mood for some happy romance. We'll see. I do want to pick up Emily Henry's The Happy Place, and I want to pick up Abby Jimenez, her new one, The Yours Truly. I still need to finish Part of Your World. I was going to read that for a book club a couple months ago and didn't finish it, even though, because I wanted to focus on it. So I ended up buying a physical copy, an e-copy. I ended up buying a copy of it rather than the audio because I don't really care for Julia Whalen. So those are a few things that are coming up for me for the month of May. I'm trying to see, I'm feeling myself out here. I want to get to Howl's Moving Castle as well because I want to watch the film with my friends. And so I have this weird idiosyncrasy where I have to read the book before I watch the movie. Even if the book and the movie are completely different, I have to read the book. I don't know why. I didn't with the Bridgerton series, and I really liked the series, and then I tried to read the book, and the book just didn't do anything for me. I didn't enjoy the books. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed my rambling of what I read this month. And yeah, if you liked this video, go ahead and hit like. It really helps me out. I've noticed even in my little bit of things that when people like and comment, it really boosts. So it would really help me out. And if you like my content, go ahead and hit subscribe. I'm hoping to have some mermaidy goodness for the month of May. And I appreciate you so much. Have a great day. Bye.